I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what3words, and I guess our journey over the last few years, and how we've gone from a small company in London to a company that's got offices all over the world, including Mongolia. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our story. And first of all, I wanted to start with the reason that we exist. And I'm going to talk to you about addresses, as in street addresses, postal addresses, the way that you find places. And we have a problem, which is that actually lots of places in the world don't have addresses. So if you think about your favorite camping spot, or maybe you're in Marrakesh and you want to tell your friends where the best place is for street food in the square, or maybe you're in a festival and you're trying to find your tent or a particular stage, all of these are places that don't have addresses. Similarly, if you're a little bit hipster and you live on a houseboat, there are all kinds of places we want to go that just don't have addresses. And so that's a bit of a problem if you're trying to find any of these places. And then sometimes when we do have addresses, it's actually quite easy to make a mistake. So recently I was staying in an Airbnb in Stuttgart, and I don't know it very well. And the address I was given was 30 Pliningerstraße. And unfortunately, there are two of those really quite close together in Stuttgart. So my taxi driver and I had quite an adventure driving around rural bits of Stuttgart trying to find my Airbnb because, hey, the addressing system was designed with two 30 Pliningerstraßes near each other. So addresses can be confusing. And I'm not just talking about Germany in this case. In London, for example, we've got lots of church roads. It's a very beautiful name. It's very poetic. It's kind of inconvenient if you're trying to find the exact place that you're going to. And as we think about addresses and how we use them, one of the things we're starting to do with addresses now, if you think about taxi apps and cars and food delivery online, a lot of what you're doing is using your voice. So we're starting to see more and more with Alexa, with Google Home, people using their voice. Now, addresses were not designed for voice. They were designed for all kinds of things. Voice was not one of them. It's certainly not designed for using my voice as a human to input into a device, into a machine. And so this is a really big problem. So, for example, I call this the Ammanford Road problem. Two problems in this picture. One is 50 and 15. They sound very similar. If you're a person talking into your car, talking into your phone, it's very easy for that to be misheard, not to be translated accurately into the machine. And you also have this problem, which is Ammanford. Now, this is a lovely word. It's a made-up word. It's a word we just invented when we were making addresses. It's the same in Germany. You'll have things like Pushkinstraße. And voice technology was not designed with made-up words in mind. It was designed with real words that we use every day. So there are all of these problems that are issues as you're looking towards technology of the future and why addresses just aren't working as well as we'd like. And then even sometimes when you do have an address and you do go to the right place, you get a pin in the middle of a building. I mean, this is a great example. There are various different ways you can get here, lots of different doors, and a pin in the middle of the building, for example, at a hospital, is not actually all that useful if I'm trying to get there in a rush. My flat in London is a great example of this. If you look at my address, you get that pin in the middle, and actually there are 4 different ways to get into my building, and it's frustrating when someone has to phone me to work out which door they should be standing beside. And it's not just us who have this problem. If you look at Google Maps in London, so even the guys making the maps, their HQ in London, you look it up and you get a pin in the middle of a street. It's actually not where the office is. It's actually in one of those buildings. So it's a problem. It's a problem if you're trying to get an Airbnb. It's a problem if you're trying to get a My Taxi or an Uber. You're trying to order pizza. There's all kinds of reasons this is frustrating. And of course, it becomes even more frustrating when we think about cars of the future. Right now, if my Uber comes to the wrong place, I can usually phone the driver and I can say, can you see the Starbucks? Driver, what can you see? Drive around the corner, or if they take me to the wrong place. Take the driver out and suddenly have a machine that's going to the wrong place, and it's much, much harder to correct. So this is Olli, the beautiful local motors autonomous bus. I know you guys have one in Berlin, working with Deutsche Bahn, actually. And so as we think about those kind of machines of the future, we need to think about addresses and how they're actually going to work. So there is a universal addressing system, and it looks like that. So this is universal, that's unique. These addresses exist everywhere. Unfortunately, that's what they look like. And no one's ever said to me, meet me for a drink at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, 0.918 seconds, etc. So the idea for us was that we wanted to create a universal address so you can use it for every single space, every single place in the world, everywhere you go, and we wanted to basically make that human-friendly. So what we did is we took the entire planet and we divided it into a grid of 57 trillion squares. Each of those squares is 3 meters by 3 meters, and each square has been labeled with a unique code, a unique address made of 3 words from the dictionary. So you can see here, if I say, come to table, chair, spoon, that is a completely unique address for that 3 meter by 3 meter square. There's no other address like it in the world. 57 trillion of these addresses. So whether you're trying to find a house in rural Alaska, if you're trying to find the particular entrance to a stadium, you're trying to find your tent at a festival, every single 3 meter by 3 meter square in the world has an address made of 3 words. Now, we did a few things to these to make them usable between humans and machines. That's the idea. So we shuffled our addresses. So similar addresses actually get put really far apart. So if I say to you, meet me at Toffee Branched Pyramid, which is in the UK, and you're typing it into a device or you're saying it into your car, and you make a mistake and maybe you misremember and you say coffee instead of toffee. Well, Toffee Branched Pyramid is in London. It's in the UK. Coffee Branched Pyramid is in West Bengal. So those are so far apart that you know immediately when you've made a mistake. So basically, there's inbuilt error detection. So the machine you're talking to can say, sorry, you've made a mistake, and it can fix it for you, unlike other addresses. So we've done this in 14 languages so far. Every spot in the world has a 3-word address. It has a GPS coordinate. On top of that is a 3-word address in each of these languages, including in German. So if you want to tell somebody to meet you at a particular bench, maybe you're going on a date and you want to meet on a bench in a park in Berlin, you can give them those 3 words in German or English, and they'll find the exact spot. Really, what's happening here is it's an algorithm that's converting those coordinates into words. So this is an app. You can download it right now. You can look up the address of your house. You can look up the address of your treehouse, the side entrance, your favorite spot on the beach to go surfing. Everywhere in the world, you can just download the app. It's free. You can look up any address anywhere in the world. So that's what we've built. And we're used now in about 170 countries. So we've been around a few years. We're almost 40 people in our HQ in London. We've been really lucky to have had backing from very forward-thinking investors, so Intel Capital, for example, and actually Deutsche Bahn. So Deutsche Bahn, through their digital ventures arm, recently came on board with us and are part of our journey of creating the addresses for the future. And we're used in all kinds of ways. And the way that, as a business, we've been able to do that through such a small team is through an API. So we have a piece of code, and we've basically enabled, through that API, we also have an SDK if you want it to work offline, because this works totally offline. You can use this to build into any kind of business. So if you've got an app, for example, if you've got a map, you can build it in. So it's in sat-navs, it's in navigation apps. If you drive a Land Rover, you can get the Jaguar Land Rover off-roading app and go off-roading in the desert using 3-word addresses to find your way. It was used at the Olympics in the transit app, in an app called HEUREKA, which was for the Olympics, because, of course, with the stadium, you've got lots of different entrances. It's all kinds of ways, all over the world. So other companies, other organizations, even governments are taking the code and they're building it in. So the idea is that this is going to be a universal address that you can use in anything. So whether I'm looking for a place to go for dinner in Singapore, whether I'm in Ireland and I've got a printed guide and it's going to tell me the 3-word address of the beautiful stone circle I want to visit, all of these, from Airbnbs in Edinburgh, for example, and then, of course, thinking about the cars of the future. So we're working with quite a few autonomous vehicle companies and actually with more traditional car companies as well, so cars with steering wheels. We're working with all of them so that soon you'll be able to get into a car, say, take me to Siesta Exit Boxing, which is actually the bus stop of one of the Olli bus stops in Berlin from Local Motors. You can say, take me to Siesta Exit Boxing, and the car will know exactly what that means. It will take those 3 words, convert it to coordinate, and route there. So really, it's a way of getting an accurate address from a human to a machine. I just wanted to show you a quick example of this. So I talked about voice. As we've seen recently with Alexa and Google Home, this is becoming it's becoming much more exciting. There's a lot more happening. And we're working with DXC, who actually recently built an Alexa and what3words tie-up so that they could route a drone just using 3 words. So this is what this looks like. There's no sound. Is it possible to have the sound?
what3words enabled me to route my drone in a way that GPS couldn't allow. I was using just 3 words to send my drone to a unique, precise location. There was like a facepalm moment where I was just like, of course.
So you can just say those 3 words into your drone, and it will know where it's going. So we've been building this technology for a while. We're working with partners all over the place. And one of the things, as we're thinking at this conference, thinking about how we're growing businesses, one of the really important things to us as a company has been thinking about how these future technologies can be inclusive, how they can bring people in. So one of the ways we're doing that is actually working with IBM Watson and Local Motors on that Olli bus. So we're working with them to make it accessible. So they have this amazing program called Accessible Olli, and it's about making sure that as you think about cars of the future, for example, if you're in a wheelchair, if you have a driverless car, suddenly you've got much more space inside, and you're able to make that vehicle much more accessible. For us, we're working with them because if you're visually impaired, it's very hard to read addresses, it's very hard to type them into maps, to look at locations on a screen, and of course it's very frustrating if you go to the wrong place. If I go to the wrong place, I can kind of look around and find my way there. If you're visually impaired, that's really hard. So we're working with IBM Watson and Local Motors on things like that to make these new technologies inclusive. And it's not just, for us, it's not just about the US and Europe and places like this where, yes, it's frustrating when my pizza is late because they couldn't find me, or the Uber takes me to the wrong place. It's actually a much bigger problem than that. So in lots of the world, addresses just don't exist at all. So this is Kennedy Road, this is in South Africa, and there's not that much happening on that map. But in reality, those are all the people who live there. Now, so I'm complaining about my pizza not coming on time. For these guys, if you don't have an address, think about what that means for not being able to vote, or access microfinance, or maybe just simply to call an ambulance. So an address is absolutely critical. So it's a problem that, it's a really, really big problem, and actually 4 billion people in the world today are living without an address. So it's really important to us that we're able to give these people a way to talk about where they live. So we're now working with 7 countries so far. So 7 countries have officially adopted what3words as a standard. You can see here, this is actually from Mongolia. So this is a letter from Mongolia. At the bottom there, that's the 3-word address in Mongolian. And we're working with governments all around the world. And Mongolia's been fascinating because that was the first country to adopt what3words a while ago. And we've now seen not only using it to send letters and to, to access microfinance and for the government to tell you where the hospitals are, equally Pizza Hut in Mongolia are using it. So you can order a pizza using 3-word addresses in Mongolia. And if you walk around the capital city, Ulaanbaatar, you'll actually see on the bus stops 3-word addresses written down. So it's been a fascinating journey for us to see how, yes, one minute I'm in Silicon Valley talking about cars and drones and voice, and then we've got my colleague in Mongolia who's working with them to make sure that in the winter you can get emergency services help to the people who need it. And I'm just going to finish just showing you a quick example of what that looks like somewhere else. So we're just opening up an office in South Africa, and South Africa has booming e-commerce. It's got lots happening in the business side, but one of the reasons for us to open up there is they have this big problem of a lack of addresses. And I thought I'd just show you what it looks like the first time that you get an address.
If you've got a problem, you're sick, you phone for the ambulance, it takes time to come. Maybe you phone from 8 in the morning, then it's gonna come late at 6 o'clock. But now I think it's gonna be easy for them.
As we work as an EMRS, we don't have actually the boundaries. So we work the whole of Devon. It's very difficult because firstly, they don't have road names written, and they also don't have house numbers.
With this new system, it looks like it's going to be very easy for these emergency services to locate wherever the problem is, because it's precise. Once a location, a 3-meter by 3-meter location is given a name, then the authorities can go straight to that place. So it's going to make life very easy for the community around the township.
The system of what3words is going to make our life so easy that we can get to these people in time. It's not going to be only me feel good. All of our public will feel good about it.
So that's what3words. Have a play, download the app, look up your address. If you're building anything to do with moving people or things from A to B, give us a shout. We can share the code with you and you can have a play. That's what3words.
Thanks a lot, Claire. We now have another 4 minutes for Q&A, so if you've got questions, we'll throw the mic, hands up. Maybe the first question that I have to start with, do you also have already, are you thinking about going 3D? I mean, now you've got it mapped out 2D, so how's that working?
We're thinking about it. I mean, for now, it's not necessary because we're based on GPS, and actually GPS doesn't work inside. And so right now, you can't really use it inside a big building because GPS won't work. It's not that complicated to add another layer, but for now, we'd say, so my flat in London, I would say deliver to flat 54, Slug Vines Bucket. And Slug Vines Bucket will get you to my doorstep, and then you press flat 54, and you go up in the elevator.
All right, cool. So questions from the audience? Hands up, anybody? Otherwise, I'll come up with another question in the meanwhile. And so, are you in Germany already? Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, it's used everywhere. The app works everywhere. The mapping is done. The addresses are done everywhere. We don't have an office here yet, although that is on the cards. We hope quite soon. Certainly, German consumers use what3words a lot. It seems to be one of the areas where people use it. I think maybe it's something that's very logical and sensible. But yeah, so we're used in here in all kinds of ways. And of course, having had Deutsche Bahn partner with us and invest in us, it means we're able to now think about what that looks like in a German context, particularly mobility of the future, so mobility as a service, autonomous vehicles.
How does it work? Like, is there a competition out there? Is it a thing that only works if you have global world domination, because then there's no confusion? Or are other people saying, no, we've got different 3 words?
No one else is doing 3 words yet. The idea for us is to be a universal standard, absolutely. We'd like you to be able to use this whether you're going on holiday in Thailand or calling the emergency services in South Africa. That's definitely the plan. No one else is doing anything quite like it. There have been other systems that have tried to do global addresses before, but nobody except us has done it with words yet.
Right. Other questions out there? Yes, now we have one.
So, first of all, that was amazing. I knew that you exist, but I never really got what you're doing. Now I'm super impressed. So I can imagine for machines, they don't care what kind of words or data you give them. But like, how hard is it actually to convince humans, to convince people to use 3 random words for an address?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. It felt like more of a challenge 3 years ago. But one of the things is that this answers a pain point. So it's actually the way we do this is we don't actually market to consumers at all. So the way we do it is we basically have a B2B to C business model. And what that means is basically I work with logistics companies, for example. And for them, it's a really expensive problem. If you can't make deliveries on time, if you're wasting time phoning your customer or looking for the right door, that's actually a very expensive problem for them. So they are actually incentivized, because it's expensive, to invest in marketing what3words. So they will then say to their customers, hey, by the way, maybe you get free delivery or 10% off when you use a 3-word address. And which is great, because then the customer uses it and they know exactly where it's going. And then once you've got that address, because it doesn't change, the customer can then use it for other things. So that's the way that we can do this with such a small team in London. Because, yeah, of course, if we were going out and trying to convince every person in the world without doing it that way, it would be a very big and expensive mission.
Yeah, cool.
Other questions? Otherwise, there's a follow-up question. Okay, last one.
Since I really like what you're doing, you're making money, right?
Yeah, so the way it works, it's a business, yes. So the way it works is the app is free, and it will always be free for people to look up and share and find addresses. But we license that piece of code to businesses. So if you're a taxi company, so we have a taxi company in India, for example, that uses us. If you're a taxi company and you want to use it, every time someone types in apple, banana, spoon, or they say it with their voice, we will charge them at scale, we would charge them to convert that to a coordinate so they can pin it on a map.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to see more from you guys.
Great, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Clare Jones.